Cold open, hooky, need you to promise me something before I start. If Netflix ever recommends you a movie you don't recognize, something you've never heard of, something that doesn't show up when you search for it, don't press play. I don't care how bored you are, I don't care how curious you get. Just scroll past it. Because if you watch even a second, you'll never feel safe looking at a screen again. I know that sounds like some cheap internet scare tactic, the kind of thing you'd read on a Reddit thread at 3 in the morning. But what I'm about to tell you isn't a campfire story. It happened to me, and maybe by the time I'm done, you'll wish I never told you at all. The movie I found doesn't exist anywhere else. I checked everywhere. It's not listed on Netflix's official site, not on IMDb, not even in those weird online film archives that list every forgotten VHS tape from the 80s. This movie isn't just obscure, it's like it was never made at all. Except it was. I saw it with my own eyes, and now I can't get it out of my head. It started like any other night, the lights off, the glow of the TV filling my apartment, autoplay trailers whispering at me from the corner of the screen. Normal, safe, mundane. I wasn't looking for trouble, I was just looking for background noise while I ate leftover pizza. That's the contrast I can't stop thinking about. How harmless everything felt. How ordinary, right up until it wasn't. The thumbnail that appeared didn't look scary at first glance. Just a dark frame, like a paused shot in the middle of a scene, with a figure barely visible. No title I recognized, no cast names. The strangest part? Netflix insisted it was a top pick for you, like it knew I was going to click. And yeah, I clicked. Of course I clicked. I'm the idiot who had to see what it was. I regret it more than anything. I should stop here. I should just shut my laptop, walk away, and pretend it never happened. But if I do, then you might stumble into it the same way I did. And trust me, you don't want to. So let me rewind. Let me explain how it all began. I guess I should start by saying I'm not the type of person who normally notices stuff like this. I'm not some hacker combing through Netflix's hidden categories or a conspiracy nut digging into the dark web for lost media. I'm just normal, boring even. My evenings usually look the same. I get home from work, toss my shoes in a pile by the door, and collapse onto the couch with whatever's left in my fridge. Then I let Netflix decide how I waste the next few hours of my life. You know how it is. The algorithm practically knows you better than you know yourself. Sometimes I joke that it's my closest friend. I mean, who else knows I'll happily rewatch the same sitcom 5 times, but also gets me to binge horror documentaries about killers I swore I'd never heard of. It's almost comforting, like Netflix has this endless supply of background noise tailored just for me. That night was no different. I was sitting there with a plate of cold pizza, thumbing through the carousel of recommendations. Same recycled thumbnails, same lazy trailers autoplaying with canned music. Nothing unusual, nothing even remotely creepy. Just the dull glow of the TV filling the room while I let my brain switch off. That's what makes what happened so unsettling. There was nothing special about that night. Nothing that should have made it memorable. That's what I keep coming back to, how normal it was, how safe I felt. And then, like a glitch in reality, there it was. At first, I didn't even realize something was wrong. I scrolled past dozens of shows before my eyes snagged on a thumbnail that hadn't been there before. I thought maybe Netflix was testing a new release. They do that sometimes, sudden drops, surprise premieres. But this wasn't promoted. No flashy banner across the screen, no new on Netflix highlight. It was just there, quiet, waiting. The image didn't make sense. It looked like a paused frame rather than a proper poster. A dimly lit room, grainy and unfocused, with a figure blurred in the corner. The kind of thing you might expect from an accidental screenshot. The title underneath was a single word I didn't recognize. Something generic like drift or hollow. I can't even be sure anymore. It flickered when I looked at it too long, like the letters didn't want to stay still. And here's the thing. Netflix swore it was a top pick for you. Personalized. Curated, stamped with the little red tag that always tempts you into clicking. Only this time, instead of feeling flattered, I felt targeted. I tried to brush it off. Algorithms are weird. Sometimes they suggest a cooking show when you've been watching horror movies, or recommend anime to people who've never touched the stuff. It's not perfect, but this was different. This wasn't just random. It felt like the system was nudging me, like someone behind the curtain wanted me to see it. I laughed at myself, tried to shake off the chill crawling up my spine. It's just a glitch, I muttered, talking to the empty room like an idiot. But the thing is, I didn't change the channel. I didn't back out to the home screen. I just stared at that thumbnail for way too long, feeling this pull in my chest, like a dare. And finally, against my better judgment, I clicked. That single decision, something as harmless as clicking on a thumbnail, was the start of everything. The start of the nightmare I can't undo. The screen went black for a second longer than it should have, like the system was buffering or hesitating. Normally, Netflix dumps you straight into the opening credits, but this time it lingered, forcing me to watch my own reflection float in the dark glass. Then, without a sound, the movie began. At first glance, it looked like any forgotten indie film. Grainy footage, muted colors, the kind of cinematography that makes you wonder if someone just pointed a camcorder at their friends and called it art. No opening credits, no title card, no music. Just a scene already in progress. A woman stood in a kitchen. That was it. She wasn't doing anything, just standing there, back to the camera, as if waiting for something to happen. The longer the shot lingered, the stranger it felt. Most movies cut every few seconds, but this one held still, suffocatingly still, like it wanted me to notice details I shouldn't. The hum of a refrigerator, the faint shuffle of her feet, the creak of the house settling. I told myself it was just slow-burn horror, artsy, pretentious. But then the woman tilted her head slightly, just slightly, and I swear she looked right at me. Not at the camera. At me, I froze. My rational brain scrambled to explain it. Maybe the actress had one of those faces that looks like it's always making eye contact, no matter where you sit. That happens, right? Still, I leaned back on the couch, uncomfortable. The scene finally cut. But instead of transitioning to something new, it was another still shot of a room. This time a living room with an old television flickering in the corner. The furniture looked outdated, like something from the early 90s. What made my skin prickle was the sound. You know how, when you turn the volume up too loud on old VHS tapes, the background static seems to breathe? That's what it sounded like the house itself was inhaling and exhaling, barely keeping rhythm. Then the dialogue began. Two voices, a man and a woman, though the camera stayed fixed on the empty living room. They weren't talking to each other. They were talking about me, not by name, not yet. But the things they said were specific enough to make my stomach lurch. "He leaves the lights off when he eats," the woman murmured. "He hates when the neighbors knock on his door." I laughed nervously, telling myself it was coincidence. Everyone hates when neighbors knock, right? Everyone eats in front of the TV sometimes. But the way they said it, the casual tone, like they were listing facts already known, made it impossible to dismiss. The shot changed again, back to the woman in the kitchen. This time she was facing the camera, though her face was still shadowed. And when she spoke, her lips didn't move, but I heard her voice anyway, clear, direct. "Are you watching?" My blood went cold. I actually looked over my shoulder, half expecting someone to be standing in the room with me. The rational part of me was screaming, "It's just a movie. Just a script. You're imagining the rest." But there's a difference between something that's creepy and something that feels personal. And this felt personal. The pacing was unbearable. Long stretches of silence broken by sudden lines that hit too close to home. Every few minutes, I caught one of the characters glancing at the camera, not in a theatrical way, but subtly, like someone checking to see if they were being watched. Like they knew I was there. I should have turned it off right then, but I didn't. Curiosity has teeth, and once it bites, you're not pulling away. I told myself I wanted to see where it was going, that I could stop any time. But deep down, I think I already knew I couldn't. The longer I watched, the heavier the air in my apartment became. My ears rang faintly, like pressure building in a plane cabin. I adjusted the volume, but the sound didn't change. It was inside my head. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take the silence anymore, the man's voice broke through. This time, he said something I'll never forget. He thinks it's only a story. That's when I knew the movie wasn't just a movie. It was watching me back. I wish I could tell you I turned it off after that. Any sane person would have. But the problem with sanity is that it's a slippery slope. You don't realize you're losing it until you're already too far gone. And me? I kept watching. The scenes didn't flow like a normal movie. There were no transitions, no story beats to follow. Just disjointed rooms, disjointed voices, each moment stretched too long, like the film was daring me to look away first. The kitchen. The living room. A hallway I didn't recognize. Then, my blood ran cold, a bedroom. Not a bedroom. My bedroom. At least, that's what it looked like. The same crooked blinds. The same chipped nightstand with the drawer that doesn't close. Even the dent in the wall above my bed frame from when I moved in. I blinked, thinking maybe I was imagining it, but the details were too precise. They couldn't have been coincidence. The shot lingered there, silent. I leaned forward, staring at the grainy image of my own space, half expecting to see myself lying on the bed. My mouth went dry when the closet door creaked open. Nothing stepped out. Just darkness. But the implication was enough to make my skin crawl. Then came the voices again. Only this time they weren't vague. They weren't describing some universal quirk. They were describing me. He leaves dishes in the sink until they smell, the woman said, her tone flat, factual. He doesn't answer calls from his mother, the man added. I actually fumbled for the remote then, my thumb hovering over the power button. But before I pressed it, the screen shifted again. It showed a street corner. My street corner. The liquor store on the end, the bus stop with the cracked bench. The camera wasn't static anymore. It was moving, like someone was walking with a handheld camcorder inching closer to my building. My pulse hammered in my throat. I told myself it had to be filmed somewhere else, a coincidence, a set that looked similar. But then the camera tilted just enough to reveal the faded numbers above the front door. My address. I felt exposed, like my walls had been stripped away. The next shot was the stairwell inside. Narrow, peeling paint, the second step that always groans when you put your weight on it. I could hear it groan on the film too, clear as day, as the camera ascended. Then it stopped in front of my apartment door. My actual door, with the dent from the last tenant's dog, the mismatched doorknob I always meant to replace. My breath caught. The man's voice whispered, almost tender. He thinks no one is watching. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. Every nerve in my body screamed that if the door on the screen opened, something unspeakable would happen. But just when the tension was unbearable, the scene cut. For a second, I thought I was safe. I thought it was over. But no, the movie wasn't done with me. The next scene showed a person sitting on a couch in a dimly lit room. Their posture slouched, a plate balanced on their lap, pizza crusts, the glow of a TV painting their face in blue light. It was me, not a lookalike, not an actor, me. Right down to the faded hoodie I was wearing that night. I don't remember dropping the remote, but I must have, because it clattered to the floor, and the sound echoed through my apartment like a gunshot. I wanted to move, to stand, to do something, but all I could do was sit there, paralyzed. Watching myself watch the movie on screen, the other me lifted his head. slowly, deliberately. And for the first time, I saw his eyes. They weren't mine. I can't describe them properly. Too dark, too hollow, like someone had carved out the parts of me that were human and left nothing but reflection. When he smiled, it wasn't joy or humor, it was hunger. The voices returned, whispering over the image. "Keep watching," the woman coaxed. "Don't look away." And I didn't. I couldn't. The film continued to feed me pieces of my own life, things no camera could have captured. My private routines, my unspoken thoughts, secrets I hadn't said out loud to anyone. "He still dreams about the one he lost," the man murmured. "He hides the letter in the drawer he never opens," the woman added. I wanted to scream. How could they know? How could they possibly know about that drawer? About her? The screen flickered again. Back to the bedroom. This time, the figure in the closet stepped forward. Just a silhouette at first, barely visible. But as it moved, I swear it started to take my shape. That's when I finally pressed the power button. The screen went black, and yet, in the reflection of the dark glass, I thought I saw someone else still sitting beside me. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Even after I shut the TV off, I sat there on the couch for hours, staring at the blank screen like it might flicker back to life on its own. Every creak in the walls, every shuffle from the upstairs neighbor made me flinch. When dawn finally came, it didn't feel like relief. It just felt like I'd survived something I couldn't name. The first thing I did that morning was check. I needed proof that I hadn't imagined it, that maybe I'd just dreamed the whole thing. I opened Netflix on my laptop, my phone, even my work computer during lunch. Nothing. No thumbnail, no strange title. My top picks were back to normal. Reality shows I'd never watch. Reruns of sitcoms I'd already binged. I told myself I'd misclicked. Maybe I'd stumbled into some weird, unlisted test footage Netflix was running. Glitches happen, but the memory of those voices lingered like smoke, impossible to wave away. That night, against my better judgment, I tried again. I went home, shut the blinds, turned off the lights, and scrolled through Netflix like nothing had happened. And there it was, not right away. Not in the first 5 minutes. But just when I was ready to give up, the thumbnail slid back into the carousel as if it had been there the whole time. Same grainy image, same flickering letters for a title. My heart pounded, but I clicked it anyway. This time, though, the movie didn't play. The screen froze, then jittered, then filled with distorted fragments of images. A frame of the kitchen, a flash of the street corner, the static hum of that old television. Each clip lasted less than a second, repeating on a loop like the system was stuck between buffering and memory. I hit back. The screen refused to respond. I tried exiting to the home menu, but the noise kept going, those broken little shards of my life replaying again and again. Then the Netflix interface itself began to warp. Titles stretched sideways, colors inverted, thumbnails flickered like corrupted files. My internet connection was fine, I checked. This wasn't lag. This was something else. The audio grew louder, distorted whispers bleeding through the static. I couldn't make out words, not clearly. But the tone was unmistakable, urgent, hungry. I pulled the plug, literally, yanked the cord out of the wall, plunging the room into silence and darkness. When I plugged it back in, the TV rebooted normally. Netflix opened like nothing had happened. No strange thumbnails, no movie. Just the same endless carousel of options. I wanted to believe that was the end of it, but the unease in my gut said otherwise. The next day, I asked a friend, Eli, if he'd ever seen anything like it. He laughed at first, called me sleep-deprived, asked if I'd been doom-scrolling horror subreddits again. But when I described the movie in detail, his expression changed. He went quiet, then shook his head. "Don't look for it again," he said finally. His voice wasn't joking anymore. I pressed him, but he wouldn't elaborate. Just repeated the same phrase, "Don't look for it again." Then he changed the subject like he was afraid of saying more. That night, I checked my Netflix again. The movie wasn't there. Not at first. But as I scrolled, I felt that same tug in my chest, the pull I couldn't explain. I knew if I kept searching long enough, it would come back. And the worst part? I wanted it to, because even though I was terrified, even though every rational part of me screamed to delete my account, I couldn't shake the need to see more, to know why it existed, to understand what it wanted from me. So I did what I always do when I can't let something go. I went online. The internet is a dangerous place when you're looking for answers you're not supposed to find. I started with the basics, Googling the title, the thumbnail, even descriptions like Netflix glitch horror movie kitchen scene. Nothing. Zero results. Not even clickbait articles from sites that churn out lists like 10 hidden Netflix gems you've never heard of. But the more I searched, the more convinced I became that the silence itself meant something. The internet always has something. Even the dumbest, most obscure movies get a forum thread or a half-baked review somewhere. This movie had nothing. It was like I'd hallucinated it, except I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. That's when I dove deeper. Reddit threads, piracy forums, Discord servers with names that sounded like inside jokes I wasn't in on. I found people arguing about lost episodes of kids' shows or claiming they'd seen versions of movies that never made it to theaters. Most of it was noise. Conspiracy theories, urban legends. But every so often I'd find a post that made my skin crawl. One in particular stuck with me. A throwaway account on a horror subreddit posted, "Has anyone else seen a Netflix movie that isn't supposed to exist?" No title, no screenshot, just that question. The replies were mostly trolls or people making jokes. But a few were different. Yes, one person wrote. It started with a kitchen. My stomach dropped. I clicked the username. Deleted. Every comment, every trace of the account, gone. Another user replied, "Don't talk about it. Don't give it attention. That's how it finds you." That post was 3 years old, and the account hadn't been active since. I should have stopped there, closed the tab, pretended I'd never seen it. But obsession doesn't care about reason. Once something takes root in your head, it grows like mold, spreading into every thought, every waking hour. I started staying up late, scrolling until my eyes burned, hunting for any scrap of information. I joined private groups, begged strangers for details, even lied about what I'd seen to bait responses. Most ignored me. A few blocked me outright. But one night, an anonymous message appeared in my inbox. It only said, "Stop," before it notices. I stared at it for a long time. My first instinct was paranoia. Someone was messing with me, maybe Eli pulling a sick joke. But the timing was too sharp, too targeted. I replied anyway. "What is it?" No answer. That's when the real paranoia set in. I started checking my blinds twice a night, double-locking the door, leaving the TV unplugged. But none of it mattered, because the movie always came back. Not every night, sometimes it disappeared for days. But then, without warning, it would slide back into my recommendations like it had been there all along. I stopped watching other shows, stopped sleeping properly. I'd sit in the dark, refreshing the Netflix menu, waiting for it to appear. Sometimes it took hours. Sometimes it didn't show up at all. But when it did, I felt the same electric jolt, equal parts dread and desire. I wasn't living anymore. I was orbiting it, Eli noticed. He cornered me one evening, his tone sharp, almost angry. "You've got to let it go," he said. "It's not a movie. It's not entertainment. It's something else." I demanded to know how he knew. His eyes darted away, and he muttered, "Because I saw it too." For a moment, I thought I'd imagined the words. But he said them again, quieter this time, like he regretted letting it slip. He wouldn't tell me more. No matter how much I pushed, he shut down, repeating the same warning. Don't look for it again, but I couldn't stop. Not now. Not when I knew I wasn't alone. The worst part? I started dreaming about it. Dreams where I'd wake up on my couch, the movie already playing, my double on screen smiling that hollow smile. Sometimes the dream bled into reality. I'd jolt awake convinced the TV was still on, but the screen would be dark. My reflection the only thing staring back. I tried to document it. Took photos of the thumbnail, screenshots of the warped interface. But every time the files corrupted. Blank images, static, sometimes just black rectangles, no proof. Nothing I could show anyone else. That's when I realized the trap. The deeper I searched, the less I had to prove it was real. Like the movie erased its own footprints as it went. But I kept going anyway, because by then, I didn't want proof. I wanted the truth, and I think it wanted me too. Obsession doesn't just eat your time. It eats your world. By the time I stumbled into the deeper corners of the internet, I wasn't even pretending to live normally anymore. Work emails piled up unanswered. My fridge was a graveyard of takeout containers. Days and nights blurred together in a haze of half-slept hours and glowing screens. Every tab I opened led to another rabbit hole. And every rabbit hole whispered the same thing. There's more beneath the surface. It was on a forgotten forum that I first saw the phrase, the deep levels. A post buried years back, written in jittery fragments like the author couldn't hold a coherent thought together. They described Netflix as a skin, a layer painted over something else, something older, hungrier. Most people only ever see the safe surface, the comedies, the dramas, the documentaries. But sometimes cracks form, and through those cracks, the deep levels bleed in. I wanted to dismiss it as role play or creepypasta, but the phrasing stuck with me. Cracks, bleeding through. That was exactly what I'd seen. The corrupted thumbnails, the warped interface. Not glitches, cracks. The post claimed that the deeper you went, the more personal the content became. The levels weren't movies, not really. They were reflections. Custom-built horrors stitched from the viewer's own life, playing back at you until you couldn't tell where the screen ended and reality began. I felt sick reading it. But I kept scrolling. Most of the replies mocked the original poster, but a handful were deadly serious. One wrote, "Don't share details." It learns from attention. Another, "Never finish the film." That's the only rule. That line haunted me. Never finish the film, but how could I not? The movie had already sunk its hooks in me. I had to know where it ended. That night, when the thumbnail reappeared, I clicked without hesitation. The film stuttered, loaded, and then something new happened. The interface changed. Gone was the familiar Netflix layout. Instead, blocky white text scrolled across a black screen. Accessing level. My stomach flipped. This wasn't part of any movie. This wasn't a stylistic choice. It was a system message, then the film resumed. The setting was unfamiliar this time. Not my apartment, not my street. A basement. Damp, concrete walls, a single light swinging overhead. In the corner sat a stack of VHS tapes, their labels smeared with something dark. The camera lingered, then zoomed in until the text came into focus. Each tape bore a name. The first was mine. I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled, hovering uselessly over the remote. The camera didn't stop. It panned slowly across the stack, revealing more names. Some I didn't recognize. Others I did. Eli, my mother. Even an old co-worker I hadn't thought about in years. Each tape looked used, rewound, and worn, like someone had already watched them dozens of times. And then, faintly, I heard it. The whirring of a VCR. The tape labeled with my name had already been slotted in. I nearly unplugged the TV again, but I didn't. I watched. The screen flickered and suddenly I wasn't looking at the basement anymore. I was looking at a recording of myself. Grainy, washed-out footage of me sitting at my desk, typing into a search bar, eyes hollow with exhaustion. It wasn't a scene from the past. It was now. It was me in that very moment, hunched forward, staring at the screen. The film was watching me watch it. I don't know how long I sat frozen like that, trapped between the TV and my reflection. Eventually, the scene cut mercifully to black. White text scrolled again. Do not continue, and then the app crashed. I stared at the blank screen, heart hammering, sweat soaking my shirt. I should have listened. I should have stopped there. But obsession doesn't care about warnings. Warnings are just invitations disguised as threats. The next day, I went back to the forum thread about the deep levels. The original post was gone, deleted entirely. But a new private message waited for me. No username, no icon. Just text, "You opened level 2. That was a mistake, I typed back before I could stop myself. What happens if I keep going? No reply. But I already knew the answer. Because that night when I turned on the TV, the thumbnail wasn't hidden anymore. It wasn't tucked into the carousel. It was waiting for me on the home screen, front and center, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. And for the first time, the title didn't flicker. It spelled itself out, bold and sharp. Level 3, Immersion. There's a point where curiosity stops being curiosity and becomes surrender. Clicking that thumbnail was exactly that, a surrender. I knew what would happen, and I did it anyway. The second I pressed play, the living room changed. Not suddenly, not like a jump cut. It was subtler, like the air shifted, like the color drained a little from the world. My couch still held me, the TV still glowed, but the space between them warped. The screen seemed farther away than it should have been, yet too close all at once. The film didn't open with a scene this time. No setting, no characters. Just a point-of-view shot like I was wearing the camera. I saw a hand reach out, pale and shaking, touching the frame of a doorway. It was my hand. My chipped nail, the faint scar across my knuckle. But it wasn't me moving it. I whispered, "No," before I realized the word had slipped out. The POV walked forward, crossing a threshold. On the other side was my apartment, or something almost like it. The walls were slightly off, too long, too narrow. The photographs on the shelves were wrong. My mother's smile just a bit too wide. Eli's eyes looking directly at me instead of into the lens. And then I realized what was happening. The movie wasn't showing me a recording anymore. It was showing me inside itself. I grabbed the remote. The buttons didn't work. I pulled the plug. The TV stayed on, humming with a low, bone-deep vibration. On screen, my double wandered into the kitchen. The camera tilted, slowly, like it was drunk or learning how to move. Every detail was there. The chipped mug in the sink, the loaf of bread I'd left on the counter. But something pulsed under the surfaces, like shadows were breathing inside the cabinets. My double opened one of the cupboards. Inside wasn't food or dishes. It was a void, a wet, yawning blackness that seemed to stretch forever. A faint sound leaked out, murmuring voices too low to make out. The kind of sound you don't just hear but feel along your ribs. I staggered backward, clutching the unplugged cord like it was a weapon. I thought about running out the door, about calling Eli, about doing literally anything except watching. But my legs wouldn't move. My body wouldn't listen. The film was in control. Then the voices from the cupboard sharpened. They weren't random whispers anymore. They were names. My name, over and over, spoken in tones that shifted, childlike, guttural, even mimicking the cadence of my own voice. My double leaned closer, pressing their ear to the void. I screamed, loud, desperate, but they didn't hear. Or maybe they did and they were ignoring me. Suddenly, the perspective changed. I wasn't watching from outside anymore. I was inside the camera, inside their body. When they reached toward the void, it was my arm extending. My skin prickled with static. I shut my eyes. I told myself it wasn't real, that if I didn't look, it couldn't continue. But that's when I heard it. The sound didn't come from the TV. It came from behind me. A low scrape like nails dragging along the floor. Then a second sound, slow, deliberate breathing. I forced my eyes open. The screen was dark now. No kitchen, no void. Just black. But reflected in that black, I saw something moving behind me. A shape. Tall, wrong, leaning too close. I spun around. The room was empty. When I looked back, the movie had resumed. Only now, the POV wasn't in my apartment anymore. It was in the living room. My real living room, the exact angle where I sat. The frame contained me, sitting on the couch, pale and frozen, staring at myself, watching myself. I think I stopped breathing then. The camera zoomed closer. My on-screen self's mouth opened, and for the first time, the movie spoke directly. Welcome to Level 3. The lights in my apartment flickered. The TV screen flared white, bright enough to bleach the room. When the light dimmed, I wasn't on the couch anymore. I was in the film. It's impossible to describe what it felt like. The air was thicker, harder to pull into my lungs. The colors too sharp, the silence too loud. My living room looked the same, but I knew instantly it wasn't mine. It was a replica, hollowed out and rebuilt for me to suffocate inside. I ran to the door. It wouldn't open. I smashed the window. Behind the glass wasn't the city or even the night. It was static. Endless static, hissing, stretching in all directions. I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I wasn't even in the world. I was inside the movie. Somewhere in the distance, the cupboard voices grew louder, rising into a single, unified chant. My name over and over, until it wasn't a word anymore, just noise, vibrating through me, making my teeth ache. That's when the realization hit me like ice water. The warning had been right. I wasn't watching the film anymore. The film was watching me, and I had just given it permission. Panic burns hot at first, but inside the film, it doesn't last. It cools too quickly, like fear has been siphoned away and recycled into something sharper, resignation. I slammed my fists against the static window until blood smeared across the glass, but nothing gave. Every door I tried warped under my hands, dissolving into blank walls. The replica of my apartment had become a cage, and every second I stayed, it shrank tighter. The television inside this false room flickered on its own. No remote, no power cord. Just a sudden burst of white followed by the basement again. The stack of tapes, my name on the first one. This time, the camera didn't linger. It zoomed straight in, fast and hungry. And when it stopped, I wasn't looking at a VHS anymore. I was looking at myself. Not a recording, not a reflection. Me, standing in that basement, pale under the swinging bulb. My double tilted its head in perfect unison with mine, but its mouth twisted wider than human jaws could stretch. "You stayed," it said. My voice but cracked, like static cutting through radio. "I didn't choose this," I whispered. "You pressed play," it hissed back. Something moved in the corners, figures peeling out of the concrete like shadows given flesh. Their faces blurred, sometimes wearing the expressions of people I loved, sometimes strangers, sometimes versions of me. They circled, whispering my name in endless loops. I covered my ears. It didn't help. The sound was inside me. The double stepped closer, each footfall echoing like a hammer strike. "Level 3 isn't watching anymore," it said. "It's becoming," I screamed. "Becoming what?" The shadows answered in unison. "You." The walls of the replica began to peel back, revealing endless rows of screens. Each one played a version of me, sleeping, eating, arguing, laughing. Thousands of lives I'd lived or could live, stretched across infinity. The realization struck hard. The movie hadn't just been recording me. It had been rewriting me, splitting me into infinite variations, harvesting every possible outcome. The double reached out, its fingers impossibly long, brushing my chest. "You are the content now," it murmured. "Others will watch. Others will fall." Rage flared where fear had collapsed. I shoved its hand away and lunged for the TV in the corner, the only familiar object left. If this was all projection, maybe breaking the screen would end it. I grabbed the heavy frame, lifted and smashed it to the floor. Glass shattered, sparks hissed. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the static poured out like smoke, filling the room, thick and choking. From the fog, dozens of arms shot forward, dragging at my skin, pulling me toward the hole where the television had been. I fought, clawing at the ground, but the grip was endless. Every shadow I'd seen now had weight. Every whisper had claws. In that moment, I thought of Eli, of his warning. Never finish the film. Maybe this was what he'd meant. This pull into the final frame. This collapse into nothing. With my last strength, I shouted into the static, "I'm not yours!" For the first time, everything paused. The arms froze, the whispers cut. The double tilted its head with something like surprise. And then the film stuttered. Like a scratched disc, the whole world jolted. The apartment, the basement, the shadows, all flickered, frames skipping too fast to hold together. I saw gaps, cracks between images. Without thinking, I threw myself into one. White light swallowed me. I woke on my couch, gasping like I'd drowned. The TV was off. The cord lay exactly where I'd yanked it from the wall days ago. Sunlight bled through the blinds. For a moment, I convinced myself it had all been a fever dream. But then I saw the glass. Tiny shards scattered across the carpet, glittering like teeth. My television screen was cracked straight through the middle, as if something had pushed outward from inside. I haven't touched it since. I don't even own a phone anymore. The glow of any screen makes my stomach turn. I read books now, on paper, trying to anchor myself to something solid. But sometimes, when I close my eyes, I still hear the chant. My name repeated in 1,000 wrong voices, and here's the part that scares me most. I know I didn't escape. Not really. The crack in the TV proves it. The movie isn't gone. It's waiting. Maybe that's why I'm writing this, to warn you. Or maybe, if I'm being honest, it's something else. Maybe the film needs me to tell the story, to spread the hook so you'll go looking for it yourself. Maybe that's how the deep levels grow, not through algorithms, but through curiosity. If you ever see a thumbnail that doesn't belong, a title you don't recognize, a frame that looks too much like your own life, don't click it. Don't even pause to stare, because once you press play, you're already inside.